Correct? Okay, good
Arima.
morning. Good morning, Primary 5. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jesus, Felipe, Vicente, Pablo, Andreana, Samuela, Maria Lydia, Maria Loretti, Ruzel, just to mention a few. I hope you guys are doing great. As you all know, we have social studies today. We have social studies today. In our first social studies lesson, we were looking at transportation. And in that particular lesson, we saw transportation in the olden days and transportation in the modern days. As concerning transportation in the olden days, we said it was pretty difficult for transportation in the olden days because people used archaic means of transporting themselves and their goods. They used animals like cows, like horses, like camels, like donkeys. And these animals, we said, are living things. So these animals got tired along the way. Some of the animals died and they needed water and food. So it was a whole complicated way of transporting things in the past. We also said that sometimes people had to trek for long distances. Just imagine that somebody wanted to leave Malabo for Bata. The person would take weeks, days to get there. But in modern day transportation, science has evolved. Science has evolved and making things much more easier for us. We have air-going aeroplanes, helicopters, jets, spacecrafts. We have on land cars, bikes, motorbikes, vans, lorries, bicycles. And we have ocean-going vessels like ships, submarines, boats, engine boats, canoes. So when you look at transportation in the past and modern transportation, they are two different things completely. Because in the past, animals were used. In the past, people had to trek for long distances. But in our present modern world, science has improved seriously on transportation. And we said for a better understanding of transportation in our modern world, it is important for us to categorize transportation under three main headings. We said land transport, water transport, and air transport. And we did mention that land transport is transportation by land, the transporting of people and goods using land. And we said railway transport, which is transport by train, is part of land transport because railways are built on land. Talking about air transport, we say it is a transportation of goods and persons by air. And we mentioned helicopters, aeroplanes, spacecrafts as some of the things that are used for air transport. Then when it comes to water transport, we mention all that we use for water transport like ships, canoes, engine boats, and so on and so forth. Submarines, remember. Today, we are trying to look at the advantages and disadvantages of each of the means of transportation. The advantages and disadvantages of each of the means of transportation. I have cleaned part of the notes already because you know your video is coming after the notes. We started with land transport. And we said the advantages of land transport are: one, land transport is good for short distances. Land transport is good for short distances. Just imagine, if I want to leave Marif, your school, to Petrol, I can easily take a taxi and get there. And a taxi is one of those things we use for land transport. So land transport is good for short distances. I also gave a second point that land transport is good for the transportation of very heavy goods. Very heavy goods. Sometimes you see trailers carrying containers with cars. Really, land transport is good for the transportation of heavy goods because airplanes cannot carry such goods that are transported on land. Airplanes cannot carry such goods that are transported on land. We also saw another advantage, the third advantage. The third advantage is that roads are very cheaper to build. It is cheaper to build roads than to build airports and seaports. That makes road transport advantageous. It is cheaper to build roads. That is why you see we have roads all over the city, but it is difficult to have airports all over the country. We have just one seaport here in Malabo. It is difficult to have seaports all over the territory. It is difficult because seaports are very expensive. That is a third advantage of road transport. Then again, for road transport, people can trek using their legs for road transport. It is another advantage. Now, we want to look at the disadvantages of road transport. What are some of the disadvantages? You are witnesses. Sometimes when you are coming to school, there is traffic jam, traffic hold-ups. Sometimes a car will have to stand in one place for 30 minutes before you drive home again. Because of what? Many more people are using cars and we have few roads. Our roads are not very wide, but there are many road users. So traffic congestion and traffic jams is one of the disadvantages of road transport. We also consider pollution. You know, cars, they use fuel. Motorbikes, they use fuel. Lorries, vans, they use fuel. And when they burn this fuel, they release smoke into the atmosphere, and the smoke causes pollution. The smoke causes what? Air pollution. The smoke causes air pollution. Even about land pollution. In garages, the waste oil that is removed from cars, when they don't manage this waste oil well, it causes land pollution. So one of the disadvantages of road transport is that those things that are used for road transport, they causes what? Air pollution. Another disadvantage of road transport. Road transport is not good for long journeys. You cannot travel by road from Malabo to the United Kingdom. You cannot travel by road from Equatorial Guinea to the United Kingdom, to the UK. So road transport is not good. Land transport is not good for long distances. Okay, we have seen some of the advantages of land transport and the disadvantages of land transport. Let us look at the next one. The next one is air transport. Transportation by air. What are some of the advantages of air transport? I know many of you have entered a plane, maybe from Malabo to Bata, from Equatorial Guinea to Spain, to the US, to Germany, to other parts of the world. And then you have also entered taxi. You've entered cars. Even some of you have entered ships too. So when you look at air transport, you see that air transport, the first advantage is that it is the fastest means of transportation. It is the fastest means of transportation. Nobody can live by road today and get to Spain the same today. But it is possible to live by air from Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, and get to Spain in the next 6, 7, or 8 hours, depending on how long the flight takes. So air transport is very fast. It is the fastest means of transportation. That makes it an advantage. We look at air transport. It's very comfortable. Yes, when you are traveling by air, you are relaxed. You have comfort. They can even serve you with food, give you drinks, give you fruits. You feel comfortable. You don't have so much gallops like when you are in a car. Before you know, you fall in a pothole. Before you know, you dive in another pothole. But air transport, though there are some gallops in the air, it depends on the air density, but it is not as much as when you are on land, traveling on land. So that makes what? An advantage for air transport. Very comfortable. Air transport is very comfortable. Okay, let us look at the bad part, the disadvantages, bad part of transportation by air. What is bad about air transport? The first point is that aeroplanes are very expensive to buy. Aeroplanes are very expensive to buy. No, with 2 million, 1 million, somebody can get a car. 500,000, somebody can get a motorbike that drives on land. But for you to own an aeroplane, you need millions and millions and millions of CFA or dollars to buy an airplane. So airplanes are very expensive. It makes it a disadvantage for air transport. The second point, airports are very expensive to build. Ask yourself, how many airports do we have in Malabo? We have 2. One is in use and the other one, they are still working on it. But some countries cannot even afford up to 4, 5, 6 airports because airports are very expensive. For you to have an airport, you need to spend too much money. So that makes it a disadvantage for air transportation. It makes it a disadvantage for air transportation. The third point is that aeroplanes and helicopters, they use fuel. They use fuel. As they are flying, they use fuel. This fuel burns and turns into smoke. And what happens when the smoke gets into the air? It causes air pollution. It causes air pollution. And we are going to look at the last disadvantage of aeroplanes. What is the last disadvantage of aeroplanes? They are happily survivors in plane crashes. In case of an accident, you people have been watching National Geography. You've heard of news of plane crashes in the world. You've watched images. How many times have you seen a plane crash and you see people surviving, survivors coming out of it? There are some cases where you have few survivors, but most of the air accidents, most of the plane crashes, they happily leave behind survivors. Nearly every passenger in a plane crash dies. So it makes air transport very, very a disadvantage in that sense. In that sense, it is a disadvantage for air transport in that sense. In case of an accident, sometimes there is a car crash, they still see people coming out from the car crash alive. But most of the time when there is an air crash, a plane crash, few or nobody survives. So it is a disadvantage for air transport. We are going to look at water transport now as our last means of transportation. Water transport. When we talk of water transport, I hope you remember, it is a transporting of goods and persons by water. Transporting of goods and persons by water. And you know the vessels that are used for water transport. Just to reiterate, we spoke of ships, we spoke of canoes, we spoke of submarines, we spoke of engine boats, and we spoke of boats. So we are trying to look at the sea. What is sea transport, water transport? How is it advantageous? We see that the first thing is that water transport is good for transporting heavy goods. Heavy goods. When you go to the Malabo port, you see the ships that come. They carry large containers filled up with cars, many cars, and many things that are very heavy. So sea transport can support very heavy goods. Very heavy goods. It makes it an advantage. Looking at the disadvantage of sea transport, we are looking at the first disadvantage of sea transport. Sea transport is very slow. Very slow. If somebody wants to leave Equatorial Guinea for the US by sea, the person will certainly take maybe months to get to the US. You see, as compared to air transport, where the person will take some hours to get to the US or some days to get to the US. But with water transport, if you decide to enter a ship and another person decides to enter a plane, both of you traveling to America the same day, the person who goes by air will arrive in hours, but the person who is going by ship might take weeks and months to get to the US. So that makes what? Water transport very slow. Transportation by water is very slow. We look at the second point. Seaports are very expensive to build. Just ask your father at home to your mother, Mom, Dad, when I look at the Malabo seaport, it's very beautiful. But can you imagine, can you tell me, give me an idea of how much money the government might have spent to get that seaport? They will tell you that it is millions and millions and millions and millions of saving for them to have the Malabo seaport. So seaports are very expensive to build. It makes it a disadvantage. That is why in most countries you see few seaports. Few seaports because the government cannot spend money to build lots of seaports. If the government embarks on such project, the country might not have money to manage other things. So the government can only afford few seaports. It makes it a disadvantage for water transport. And let us look at the third point. Seagoing vessels are very expensive to buy. Ships. If you ask how much money they use to build a ship or to buy a ship, just imagine, ask. You can even go on internet and you ask, how much is a ship? A ship that has a capacity of maybe carrying 200 people, a passenger ship, they will tell you millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, canoes, engine boats, ships, they are very expensive. they are expensive. Just imagine a ship and cars. You can buy many cars. Cars are cheaper. But for you to buy a ship, I hope you heard about the story of the Titanic. The Titanic was one of the world's biggest and most expensive ships. If you find out how much money was used in constructing the Titanic, it will baffle you. So ships are very expensive. It makes water transport a disadvantage, because for you to travel by water, you need a sea-going vessel, which could be a ship, a canoe, a boat, an engine boat. So, as a resume or a conclusion of everything that we have seen, we have looked at the advantages of each means of transportation, starting with land transport, air transport, and ending with water transport. In our next lesson in transportation, we shall be focusing on traffic problems in the UK. Like you know already, the book we are using, Geography Success 5, is based on the United Kingdom, since we are using the Cambridge system. So in our next class, we shall be looking at traffic problems in the UK. How are there traffic problems in the UK, and what is the government of the United Kingdom doing to resolve the problems of traffic? I hope you guys have your books at home with you, your Geography Success. Please study at home, so that when we shall be getting to the next lesson in social studies, it will be just some sort of revision, because when you read ahead, things become easy for you to assimilate. Thank you so very much. I'll be waiting for your questions on our platform. If you have any questions, bring them up on the platform. I just sent some questions to you on your platform. Those questions, I send them because I know your books are here with me. I'm marking your books. So you have to copy the questions on a piece of paper, answer them, and then you drop them back here.